As you guys might know by now, Dark Magician is my favorite deck. I have been doing a whole bunch of videos on him, updating him from format to format, ban list to ban list, and I even pioneered the Dragon Link variant over the deck that I have been seeing popping up on Duel Link's meta since I dropped that video. It's crazy, when I started doing YouTube, it's not like I didn't build decks back then, but when I built a deck differently to how everybody else built it, everyone kind of ignored me. But now the fact that I can show a new version of a deck, people will actually play it, you know, makes me feel happy. So I definitely appreciate all the Dark Magician players out there who are taking inspiration from my deck lists. Before I jump into what I'm talking about in this video, I do want to say I'm not going over all the stuff that I went over in the previous videos, but I have made a playlist for you to watch if you have not played Dark Magician before and you want to get caught up. And I do think that even though those deck builds are outdated now, the information in those videos is still definitely important, and I don't necessarily want to rehash all that information because that might make this video over an hour long. It's a very complicated deck to play, so it's definitely something that you would want to invest time into researching first before you play it. Dragoon, even though it is obviously a solid card, it has a lot of weaknesses. You're only allowed to play it in Branded, Red Eyes, and Dark Magician 3 decks that are either better without it or just aren't able to protect the Dragoon well enough. And when you're trying to protect Dragoon, the guy who's supposed to be the most protected card in the game, it's not looking good for you, bro. So the way that my Dark Magician deck works is that it doesn't rely on any protection effects. It just tries to interrupt the opponent as much as possible, trying to play around the opponent's board breakers. If the opponent droplets us, we're perfectly fine. If they kaiju us, we're perfectly fine. And this is all because we just combo out into Hieratic Seal, interrupt the hell out of the opponent with that. Hieratic Seal is one of the best interruptions in the game, and then using the dragon that the Hieratic Seal summons from the deck, we can fuse into Dragoon on the opponent's turn, back it up with an Eternal Soul alongside a combination Omni Negate. So we got 2 Omni Negates we can use. We got the Hieratic Seal removal. It's a very solid amount of interruption. And going second, we actually get to take advantage of Dragoon a lot better, because while a lot of people, myself included, have noted that Dragoon is not the big going first threat that people say he is, going second, he's a lot more of a threat, because all the ways that people have of outing Dragoon are things that they can do on their own turn. There are very few ways to out Dragoon the exact turn he's summoned as quick effects because of Dragoon's negate and his protection, keeping him safe from most forms of interruption. So Dragoon is actually a much better going second tool than it is a going first tool, alongside the fact that Dark Magician has some insane going second tools at its disposal, like Expanded, and we'll talk a lot about Expanded in today's video. Why this deck needed an upgrade though is the fact that this whole game plan of Hieratic Seal into Dragoon with an Omni Negate backing up behind it, while it is a lot of interruptions, some decks just have a very good time against this specific game plan because these particular interruptions don't phase them as much. And then going second, even Dragoon isn't going to be that good against, for example, Tachyon, that can just make themselves unaffected, right? So in order to update this deck for the current format, we need to, you know, allow it to keep its strengths, but also give it some more options in different matchups so that our one-trick pony, let's say, isn't the only thing that we have to rely on. We're playing a lot more links the way that we did last year, so that way we have multiple different turn 1 options and turn 2 options available to us that don't just rely on fusions. First of all, just a refresher, I know I said I wouldn't rehash anything, but I think it's at least important to go over the combo we're going to be going for the majority of the time. In order to have this combo go off, we need to open either Apprentice, Magician's Souls, or Magician's Rod, or Soul Servant in conjunction with any other spellcaster, or Secrets of Dark Magic in conjunction with any other spellcaster. And if we open Apprentice, Rod, or Souls, then we're typically going to be searching for the other 2. And if we open Rod or Illusion of Chaos, then we're going to use that before using our skill, because we can bait out the opponent's Droll and Lockbird to kind of help us figure out what we should search for with a skill. Playing 3 Illusion of Chaos, having Illusion of Chaos here is so important to give us the most absolute consistent access to our 3 starters here. In my previous videos, I did not need 3 copies of it because it's like I was always going to get 3 copies of these, but the point isn't to get these more consistently. The point is that the more monsters I have in my hand that are my starter, the more I can use my skill to search for the other cards that I want for my turn 1 play, right? So the more redundancy I have, the better my searching can be. In this case, I have both Soul Servant and Apprentice and Secrets of Dark Magic, and a lot of the hands are going to have 3 of the pieces that you need. So I'm going to activate this skill here, revealing Apprentice, sending back the Grand Tusk, sending Dark Magician Go from deck to grave, searching for Rod and Souls. Right here we have everything we need, so if the opponent does Droll us here, we are okay. The Soul Servant not being able to draw cards if the opponent draws us is definitely hurtful, and we will have to go for the other play if that does happen. We're going to start with Magician's Rod here. That's going to activate. Since we already have our search targets, I'm just going to grab my Magician's Salvation, activate my Magician's Salvation, and set Eternal Soul from the deck. We're doing this first because deck thinning is deck winning, guys, and before we use Soul Servant, we always have to use Magician's Souls. So setting Dark Magician from deck to grave, say yes, special summon Dark Magician from the graveyard, and at this point you actually can and should use Magician's Salvation to revive Dark Magician Girl. However, if you didn't have Salvation to revive Dark Magician Girl, that's perfectly fine. You can just use Apprentice for this next bit. Target our Dark Magician, revive our Dark Magician Girl. By the way, look at that artwork. We're going to link off into Protector Whelp, making sure to use both of our effect monsters, whether that be Dark Magician Girl or Apprentice, it doesn't matter. And we can link off into Imduct to the zone that Protector Whelp points to, and you link those two off into Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Sphere. It's very rarely a good move to go for spheres going second because Hieratic Seal can only be used on the opponent's turn, so you would only go for this turn 1 combo play if you feel like the path to victory is grinding the opponent out, and typically going second, the plan is to just kill the opponent rather than grinding them out. At this point, since you have both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in rotation, you can use Soul Servant. I would search Secrets of Dark Magic if I did not have it already, but since I already do have it, I'm going to search for Magician's Combination, draw 2 cards, set Combination. I can set Secrets of Dark Magic. I can special summon Apprentice by discarding any card. That's going to allow us to get Dark Magician in hand. It is important to get Dark Magician in hand because we need to have either discard fodder or something to use in hand for a fusion summon. And on the opponent's turn, we can flip up Eternal Soul, activate it right away. At this point, I'm going to use my Salvation, targeting my Dark Magician to revive Dark Magician Girl. Then I'm going to be able to use my Rod, tributing my Dark Magician Girl to add the Rod back to my hand. This is important. Keep your toggle on for this and make sure you don't use your Rod until Dark Magician Girl hits the field. You want to make sure that as soon as it hits the field, you can use it so that our combination is online again. You know what I mean? Okay, so we can use our Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, tributing itself to bounce an opponent's face-up card. That's going to trigger to summon a dragon from deck that can either be Timaeus or Grand Tusk, and Grand Tusk on summon can destroy 2 cards on the field. If the opponent has 2 other cards, then we can do that, but at this point we can use Secrets of Dark Magic. This can also get around targeted negation on the Grand Tusk, fusion summon our Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and you might actually prefer to leave your Dark Magician on the field, so you use your effect dragon and your Dark Magician from hand. That way you still have a Dark Magician on the field for your Magician's Combination to be able to negate something. So I can flip this up and now I have 2 Omni Negates. I have the Dragoon, I have the Combination, and if you did not need to discard the Rod for the effect of Dark Dragoon to negate something, or if you top deck into an Illusion of Chaos or any other way to search for Rod, then you can follow up by using Rod to search for another Soul Servant. Soul Servant can search something else like Magician's Circle, then you can use Eternal Soul to revive Dark Magician and banish something, making going for game really easy, alongside the fact that Dragoon can also remove stuff. Typically, if the opponent has anything left on the field that's a threat, hopefully it's in attack mode and we can search for Apprentice or Dark Magic Expanded to boost up our Dragoon's attack and just punch in for game. Against some matchups, or if we get drolled, we can shift up our game plan a bit. It's going to require a very similar hand anyway. The main difference being that we are never going to be searching for Secret of Dark Magic in this case. Instead, we're going to be searching for Dark Magical Circle. And aside from that, it's pretty much standard. We're going to be trying to get Salvation, Combination, and the third back row is going to be Circle instead of Secret of Dark Magic. The other great thing about this combo is that we don't actually need all 3 pieces all the time. However, having all 3 pieces all the time, still fantastic. Here I actually have a pretty damn cracked hand because I have 3 searchers here. I can use my Illusion of Chaos right off bat to search for another piece. So, you know, getting the monster piece in your hand first takes it out of your mind when you're using your skill search, so you don't misplay. Then we can use the skill, revealing something. I'll shuffle this one back, not to have a skill target in hand, just to show how much we can search for. I'll search for the Apprentice Illusion and Dark Magical Circle, and I'll start with a circle here because I might get something from the top, and that I actually did get something from the top. That's pretty nice because, you know, getting something from the top means that you don't have to search for it later, right? Then I'm going to use my Magician's Rod here, and I can use that to search as well. In this case, I'm going to search for Salvation, and if you have to search Salvation later or you can't search for Salvation, that's perfectly fine. That's what the Apprentice is there for, right guys? But since I do have it, I might as well use the Magician's Souls to send Dark Magician from deck to grave, say yes, special summon Dark Magician, trigger the Salvation, targeting that Dark Magician to bring back Dark Magician Girl. And this time, we're going to be linking off into the one and only IP Mask, using our Dark Magician as material, because combination does not need Dark Magician specifically on the field. It can be Dark Magician Girl, and we kind of prefer to have Dark Magician Girl on the field because it can be used alongside IP Mask to go into Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. That's especially important against Tachyon. So then at this point we can use our Soul Servant to search for combination. I mean, that's what we would be searching for. We would be searching for combination here, but since I already have that, I guess I'll search for either Expanded or Apprentice Illusion Magician. I'll search for Expanded. It might be able to help me on my follow-up play. Draw 2 cards with the Soul Servant, and I can discard a card with Apprentice to summon itself, search another Dark Magician, set my combination, and in this case we're not actually going to flip up the Eternal Soul on the opponent's draw phase. We're just going to wait until they do something. We're going to use IP alongside our 2 monsters we already have to go into Goddess using their effect monster. The next time they do something, we can use Eternal Soul to revive our Dark Magician, which is going to trigger the circle to banish what they have. And then if they use another effect, then we can use our combination, tributing our Dark Magician to bring back our Dark Magician Girl, which will then trigger the Salvation to bring back the Dark Magician. That is typically going to be enough for the decks that the Heretic Seal deck isn't going to be good for. I'll leave my traps face down for when I need them. I can go IP. Instead of going Goddess, I can go for a Unicorn. That might even be important if we did not have Salvation, because Salvation is what gives us the extra body here. And that doesn't mean that we can't Goddess. However, it will mean that we have to use the Eternal Soul interruption first, so we can get the Dark Magician Girl out using the Salvation, so that we can Goddess, and then we have the Omni Negate afterwards. A better hand gives us more versatility for how we can interrupt the opponent, and I typically discard Dark Magician in this case, just because I can revive it anyway. And if the opponent has something to interrupt, that I can special summon Dark Magician from grave, and when I do that, I can use my circle to banish one of their things, and at that point I actually would not use my Salvation to revive it unless I want to use Rod. So I could use my Salvation, targeting my Dark Magician, reviving Dark Magician Girl, and then using the Rod to tribute either Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, so that I still have one of them in grave, so that I can still use my combination Omni Negate. You always have to keep the combination Omni Negate in mind when going for this, but you might choose not to do that if you are fearing the opponent has some kind of a quick effect that is going to turn off your Omni Negate by going for this process. The only downside about going for this play is that we are clogging up our back row in this way, so the only way for us to go for Dragoon in a game like this is if we can get Timaeus, and it's not going to be so easy to get Timaeus if we can't use our Soul Servant to put it on top of the deck, so we're just going to hope to draw into Illusion of Chaos to search for it. That is the downside of this play, however, but that is assuming that we give a bit damn about having Dragoon on the follow-up play. Dragoon is not the king of this deck, okay? Dark Magician is the king of this deck. Dragoon is just one of the ways that this deck wins, because if I IP Goddessed them, Omni Negated them, and circled them, a lot of decks are just going to fold to that. Shout out to Judai for subscribing. We do shout out anybody who subscribes in the middle of a recording, so hey bro, if you want that to be you, make sure you're subscribed. But hey bro, we're about to talk about how to effectively OTK a lot of people. There's 2 primary ways that we go about OTKs. The first focuses around Dragoon, the second focuses around Underworld Goddess. We can always go for a Dragoon OTK as long as the opponent has an attack position monster. Because of the fact that he's untargetable and indestructible, a lot of the opponent's interruptions aren't going to work against him. And if the opponent does have some kind of interruption that can deal with him, he can typically negate it. However, we do want to make it even safer, so we are going to be taking advantage of Dark Magic Expanded. Its 3 effects are pretty good. It can make it so your opponent is not allowed to respond to your back row effects. We'll talk about how we go about these in a second, but first of all, when we go second, the first thing we always do is use the second part of the skill to put Ultimate Fusion in hand and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon on the field. Against Tachyon, they might have the ability to put a Tachyon on our side of the field, and that will prevent us from doing that. However, that does still put a body on our field that we can use to go into Goddess, so they're kind of playing into Goddess. But at this point, the main goal, whenever we're going second, is to set up both Expanded and a Dragoon summon. The way Expanded works is that it needs Dark Magician Girl and Dark Magician on the field and in the graveyard to get a certain amount of effects. If we only have 1 between them, then it only gets the buff effect. If we only have 2 between them, then it gets both a buff effect and the part that the opponent can't respond to your back row. If we have 3 in rotation, so 1 Dark Magician Girl, 2 Dark Magician, then it makes our currently controlled spellcasters that are dark unaffected. That does include Dragoon. He is a dark spellcaster, but The important part of this is the second effect that makes it so that the opponent can't respond to you. The opponent not being able to respond to you is such a huge deal that setting that up is always going to be our #1 priority. We typically do that by using the skill first of all. That's going to put Dark Magician Girl in the grave, and second of all, we're going to use Magician Souls to either summon itself or Dark Magician, and that's going to set up 2. Immediately our expanded will be turned on. So let's show an example of that. We're going to use our Illusion of Chaos that can search for any of our pieces here. I'm going to search for Magician Souls, shuffle a card back, I'll shuffle back the Illusion of Chaos itself. Then I can use the skill, revealing my other Illusion of Chaos, I don't need it, shuffle that one back, send Dark Magician Girl, and I can add, let me add Rod and Expanded in this case. Then instead of summoning Rod first, we're going to summon Magician Souls first, and it doesn't always matter which one you go for, either special summon it or special summon Dark Magician. I will say, if you're afraid of the opponent having a Book of Eclipse, then you might want to summon the Magician Souls, that way they can't turn off your Expanded's effect. So in this case, we're just going to summon the Dark Magician, so send Dark Magician, say yes. Now at this point, when we use our Dark Magic Expanded, if the opponent has a way to negate it, that is a negate that they are not using on our other effects. And that is important. We are kind of okay with them using their negate on this because we can actually get it back. But the important thing is, we'll just activate our expanded here. We're going to gain some attack value, and we are not getting the third effect that makes us unaffected because it's not the important part of the card. The important part of the card is now if we were to use any of our other spells, the opponent can't interrupt them in any way whatsoever. So we can use our Ultimate Fusion to break the opponent's board. We can use our Soul Servant to get a search and they can't negate it. So if they negate this, we'll talk about what we can do about that later. But having that protect the whole rest of our back row plays, absolutely disgusting. I'm going to use my Rod since I have it. Use that to get a searchy search. I can search for my Secrets of Dark Magic. Then I can use my Soul Servant. That can put a dragon on the top of my deck. I don't need to link into a dragon here. I can just draw a dragon and that can be my fusion material by itself. And if the opponent has a back row that we are afraid of, maybe they have Eclipse or Droplet, we can actually go into Nightmare Phoenix to get rid of a back row, and that can help shore up the matchup a bit further. So I'm going to go into that, discard my illusion in this case, pop that back row, we'll just pretend it was a droplet. And the cool thing to keep in mind, if the opponent responds to anything we do, we can chain Ultimate Fusion, pop something they do. At this point I don't have a Dark Magician, that's okay. I can use my Apprentice to discard a card to summon itself. I can search a Dark Magician. They can respond to our monsters still. You know, if we are afraid of a monster negate, then we can just keep our Dark Magician in rotation. We can go Secret of Dark Magic, go into our Dragoon here. The only card I have left in hand is my Ultimate Fusion, because sometimes the threat of Ultimate Fusion is actually better than Ultimate Fusion itself. Sometimes I actually keep my Ultimate Fusion in hand just to have something to discard from my Dragoon here. I can use my Dragoon to pop one of their monsters, burn them as a result, and typically I'll be able to go for game by just attacking over one of their attack mode monsters and using Apprentice to make his attack bigger. And if the opponent forces us to negate something, we get even more damage. We are typically able to OTK most opponents in this way. We typically go for the Underworld Goddess against decks that don't give a shit about our Dragoon, or against players that don't summon anything in attack mode. This is a deck that unfortunately, because of the skill, cannot summon Kaijus. You can summon Kaijus in the other version of Dark Magician with the other skill. However, that skill sucks in every other regard, so don't worry about it. So going for the Goddess play, the main priority is to get a whole bunch of bodies on the field without the opponent preventing us. Expanded is going to be a big part of that as well, just as it was with a Dragoon. However, against a lot of matchups, the expanded isn't going to be as important. Sometimes just going for Dragoon is going to be enough, but for this play, you absolutely need the expanded to make sure that your shit either resolves or that they negate the expanded. And I'll show more examples later of why expanded is so damn good. However, I'll just show what we do going second here if we are going for the Goddess play. So first of all, we always put the Ultimate Fusion in hand and the Ultimate Dragon on the field. And funnily enough, the most important part about the Ultimate Fusion is simply getting the body of Dragon Master Knight. So a lot of the time when we use Ultimate Fusion to pop an opponent's monster, the opponent will destroy our Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and we can still go into Dragon Master Knight by shuffling back the materials. The important part was always the body in that case. But if the opponent has banishing or shuffling removal for our face down Ultimate Dragon, then we aren't going to try to do that because we still need that body on the board. We're going to try to bait out their interruptions in other ways. We already have the expanded here, so we don't need to search for that. So I'm going to use the skill, get a searchy search, reveal Dark Magician, put back the combination, sends Dark Magician Girl, and we can search for 2 pieces here. Going second, you might search for Circle. That's also a great way to bait out opponents' back row negates, but that's only if your hand can really afford it. If your hand can afford to search for Circle, that's absolutely fantastic, but typically start with Magician's Souls, special summoning my Dark Magician. So I'll just special summon that Dark Magician, and sometimes I might even summon Dark Magician Girl just because it is an effect monster and I can't use effect monsters to go into Goddess. But if I went for Circle, then obviously I have to summon Dark Magician to banish an opponent's card, right? Then I can summon my Rod here. In this case, Rod is going to search for Soul Servant. Now that I do have my Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in rotation, I can just use my Dark Magic Expanded right now, and if they chain to it, then I can just use my Ultimate Fusion. I don't actually need the attack value here. And then if the opponent has a back row, then I can go Nightmare Phoenix using these two. Getting rid of one of the back row is going to make it easier for things to resolve, and now I can use my Soul Servant. One of the difficult things about this is that Goddess being only 3k attack, putting all of our resources into it, we do need to, after Goddess comes down, we do need to get another way to have a body on board. So sometimes you might just use your search on another way to get a body on board. Like for example, you might search for Timaeus, or you might search for Illusion of Chaos. If you can ritual summon it, he's actually not bad to ritual summon, because if the opponent has Nibiru at the end of your main phase, you can negate the Nibiru, special summon Dark Magician, and still attack for game. I guess I'll just put Illusion of Chaos on top in that case. Draw 2 cards with a Soul Servant. Since the opponent only has 1 face-up card on the field, I am going to use my Ultimate Fusion, but I'm not going to pop an opponent's monster just because I want to use an opponent's monster as material to go into Goddess. Typically you say yes here, obviously, but I'm going to say no in this case. You're going to special summon my Apprentice, discarding Dark Magician because I can always get another one. Activate to search another Dark Magician. Now I can go right into my Goddess. As long as we can get a Link 2 and 2 other bodies on board, we can go into Goddess with an opponent's effect monster. There we go. If the opponent has any revival, Goddess can negate it. If the opponent has any other face-up cards on the field, it negates them, and it is unaffected by any opponent's effects that don't target. That can be pretty important. I can use my Illusion of Chaos here, actually. That's pretty cool. I can search for Apprentice. I could search for Timaeus. Maybe I could go into Dragoon. That's kind of cool. Fuck it, bro. Let's go into Dragoon. Return the Rod. Fusion summon. I could use Timaeus or my Secrets of Dark Magic to fusion summon, doesn't matter which one. There we go. And that's game. Of course, the Dragoon is not mandatory for this play. I just, I happen to be able to go for it, so I might as well, right? So this is my deck list as it stands right now. Let's talk about it real quick. First of all, you might be wondering, where is Dragonite? After playing it a lot, I've just discovered that it's always getting in the way. I think Dragonite is obviously very good in the other version of the deck, but it doesn't matter because the other version of the deck isn't good. You might also be wondering, where the hell is Master of Chaos? Well, Master of Chaos OTK, while it is very good, it's some decks it's just straight up isn't going to work against. It's not that you can't consistently pull it off. However, pulling it off against interruptions is very difficult if they know what you're doing. And I don't want to be playing a game plan in my deck that relies on the opponent not knowing what I'm doing. That's a fake game plan, guys. So I don't think Master of Chaos is going to make the cut. You could play the Dark Magicians, but not really because of his effect, just because you can use Secrets of Dark Magic to fuse Rod away to go into this just to dodge the opponent's Effect Veiler, but this deck can play through Effect Veiler, so it's up to you. If you wanted to play it, you could cut out Nightmare Phoenix. The Nightmare Phoenix here is the flex spot here. Every other card in this extra deck is absolutely core to the game plan. I think that the Phoenix is the best choice because Eclipse. Oh, thanks for the subscription, Tom. We got 2 shoutouts in the same video. That's crazy, man. Shoutouts to you guys, bro. Yeah, Eclipse is the way that the opponent can easily get around the Goddess play, so being able to prevent that by going into an early Phoenix is definitely very helpful. Instead of that, you could also play the Great Double Casted Caster because you can fuse Secrets of Dark Magic with the ultimate dragon that the skill gives you to go into this to just attack directly for 4,500 damage. But unfortunately, Hope Harbinger, which is very popular right now, can actually redirect that attack to himself, so that direct attack isn't actually going to happen a lot of the time, unfortunately. So having this Nightmare Phoenix, in my opinion, is the best option as far as that's concerned. I'm also not playing Navigation anymore because having an extra trap card in your deck that we don't even go for that often anyway, and is mainly just there to be discard fodder for Apprentice, is not really worth the fact that it causes bricks for us, so I cut it from the deck. You might also be wondering why 3 copies of Dark Magician. You can 100% get away with with 2 copies of Dark Magician. You cannot get away with 1 copy of Dark Magician in this version of the deck. I know the other version can play 1 Dark Magician, but this one it needs at least 2 copies. The reason I play the 3rd copy is that sometimes the apprentice being able to search for the 3rd one can be important, mainly so that I have more discard fodder for other apprentices, a Timaeus, or for Dragoon, or even for my Nightmare links. Just having extra card advantage available to me is definitely very important sometimes. I have seen some people cutting down on apprentice because they think it's just a battle hand trap, and yes, when you're going second it is just a battle hand trap with your Dragoon. However, it is a very stupid thing to do to be cutting out your apprentice. Having the apprentice to search that Dark Magician to be in the hand is fantastic. Helps us play around Crow as well as the fact that it is just a body to help us go into the Goddess. Having multiple of this is sometimes the way to go for game with Dragoon. Sometimes the opponent's only attack position monster is a big monster and you need to search for 2 apprentice just to punch in for game with Dragoon. That is a play that I go for a lot of the time. So don't be cutting out your apprentices, guys. Alright, that's the #1 thing I've been seeing people cut. Do not cut this card. Now, if you wanted to see replays of me setting up the Hierarch Seal play and interrupting the opponent that way, you can go to my previous Dark Magician videos. This time though, I'm going to showcase what is new about the deck, the new game plan, the new thought processes against Tachyon. Okay, so here I'm going first. I'm summoning my Rod first to potentially bait out an opponent's interruptions, see what I need to search later. He is going to use his Effect Veiler. That means that I know what I need for later on. At this point, I'm going to use my skill, revealing Illusion of Chaos, putting back my Secret of Dark Magic, because I don't need that against Tachyon. I'm going to send my Dark Magician Girl to the grave, add Magician Souls and Soul Servant. Then before using Soul Servant, I'm going to use Illusion of Chaos, searching for my apprentice. Now I have the full combo. Then I can reshuffle back my Illusion of Chaos. My Magician Soul is going to activate, sending Dark Magician to revive my Dark Magician. I can use my Soul Servant, putting Magician Salvation on top, draw 2 cards, activate my Magician Salvation to set a back row to the field. Then I can discard my expansion to summon my apprentice Illusion Magician. That's going to search for another Dark Magician. Then I link both of these 2 off into IP Mask. Now, at this point, I did actually misplay. What I should have done is keep my Dark Magician Girl on the field. That way my combination would still be live, but also I could use my Dark Magician Girl if I wanted to be able to go into Goddess as soon as possible. But I'm going to set my back row. He's going to start. I was not able to get my circle, but if he did not have the Effect Veiler on my Rod, then that's what my extra search would have been. I would have had the circle. But since I don't have the circle, on his draw phase, I can flip out my combination. He's going to activate the 7th one. I'm going to combination negate that right away. And that's fantastic because it's going to prevent him from getting Neo Galaxy Eyes. My stuff is not going to get negated. And in this way, I get to revive my Dark Magician Girl. That's going to trigger to revive my Dark Magician. Rod contribute my Dark Magician to add itself back to my hand. Then he's going to use his skill, revealing Tachyon Spiral Galaxy to get Force Shield Infinity Dragon and summon that alongside another one from deck. He summons his Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Now, if he keeps that on the field, he's going to be able to go into the new Xyz to punch me for a lot of damage. That's not something I can survive. So I'm going to be able to go into my Nightmare Unicorn, discard my Dark Magician to get rid of his Galaxy Eyes, and he is going to be able to play through. However, I don't think he's going to be able to get lethal, though. He summons, and he goes into Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon, which does not get all of the bonus effects unless it has original Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon as material. He goes into Prime Photon, he detaches a material and he attacks, but he attacks 3 times on monsters. If I control no monsters, he's not attacking anymore. So he attacks with Infinity Dragon. At this point, I can use Eternal Soul to revive my Dark Magician. Since his defense is too high for his attack, he has to cancel his attack. Then his Prime Photon Dragon attacks again. I'm all good. He probably has that trap back there, so I'm kind of screwed a little bit if I can't get rid of him through him being unaffected. So I'm gonna have to use my skill here. That's going to get me my Ultimate Fusion and my Ultimate Dragon here. Now at this point, I could bait him to use his trap and then chain my Ultimate Fusion in response to his trap to get rid of him. I activate my Ultimate Fusion, just keeping in mind though that probably the better choice would be to, you know, try to Rod, search for other things. With my back row being clogged, I wouldn't be able to bait him while I have another back row in my back row slot. So he's going to use his Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, protecting his Xyz. I'm going to have to use my pop on his Infinity Dragon here. I can still go over him in battle, so I'm obviously fine, right? But I'm going to use my Rod. Rod is going to search for a Soul Servant. That's what's so great about adding Rod back to hand. Soul Servant is going to put Apprentice on top, going to draw 2 cards, link off, into Protected Wealth of the Destruction Swordsman. Then I can Magician Souls send my Illusion, revive Dark Magician. Salvation can revive my Dark Magician girl. Then I can link off Dark Magician into Induct because it is an effect monster. Then I can link everything off into Underworld Goddess. Attack, Eternal Soul, revive Dark Magician, Dark Magic attack. That's how you do it, my boys. There you go. Just keeping in mind too that, you know, if I had a better hand, I would have been able to pull off the Circle Interruption as well. And if he had a better hand, then my misplay not being able to go into Goddess would have put me in a much better position, because going first, going into Goddess, and keeping the opponent off of Galaxy Eye's Photon Dragon in whatever way I have of going about that prevents him from going for game, because Galaxy Eyes with just the one rank 8 with a Link Engrave cannot punch over her game on a 3k body, and the Goddess is going to be unaffected by anything that Tachyon tries to do to it because of the fact that it's unaffected by effects that don't target and by effects that destroy because of the IP. So Goddess is actually fantastic against Tachyon. It prevents them from going for game basically one way or another. Going first against Tachyon isn't actually that difficult because Tachyon's going first plays are really where its strengths lie. Going second, they are just hoping to staple you to death so that they can hopefully have a better turn too. So going for the IP play when we go first is typically going to be good enough alongside our back row. Against most matchups, the Hieratic Seal is going to be fantastic for going first. So going first really is not the issue for this deck. Really the issue is going second, especially Tachyon. Tachyon is really the only deck that really gives us the biggest amount of trouble when they go first. So we are going to be absolutely trying our best to set up Expanded into a Goddess play, and that's pretty much the only way to beat them. But we have extra avenues with Expanded and Soul Servant having a little combo here. So in this replay here against Liskun, shout out Liskun from the Discord, he helped me to optimize the deck further through testing. He's going to do his play, reveal his primal, search for Infinity, activate Infinity in the hand, summon itself alongside the Galactic Spiral from deck, rank up into Dragluxion, that is going to search for his Galactic Spiral Galaxy. That tells me he either already has the trap or is about to search for the other trap. So he's going to go into Galaxy Eye's Tachyon Dragon in defense mode because he knows that I can attack into attack mode monsters pretty easily. He's going to activate his primal, summon itself. That's going to search for his 7th Tachyon, so he obviously has the other trap, right? And you can use Spiral Galaxy to go into Hope Harbinger. That background negate is actually very legit against this matchup, so we're going to use our skill, obviously, first of all, putting the Ultimate Fusion and our Ultimate Dragon onto the field. Then we can use our Illusion of Chaos to search Magician Souls. Now we have all 3 of our monster pieces in the hand. You can shuffle back Eternal Soul, use the skill, reveal the illusion, shuffle it back and search for Expanded and Soul Servant. Expanded, Soul Servant, and Ultimate Fusion are how we beat Tachyon. So first of all, we're going to make sure that the Expander is turned on by summoning Dark Magician. Then we can normal summon Rod to see if we can bait out an Effect Veiler. That's exactly what they have. Tachyon typically plays 3 Effect Veiler, 3 Imperm, so I try to bait that out to just get it out the way. Then I can activate my Expanded. He has to use his negate here because otherwise he's not going to be able to use his traps to respond to anything else that I do. But at this point I can link off into Imduct and I can discard my Secret of Dark Magic to summon my Apprentice Illusion of Magician. That's going to search for another Dark Magician, but he can use his Transmigration here. Trying to bait out his Transmigration is the real big deal here, because the more bodies that he lets me summon to the field, the easier it's going to be for me to go into Goddess. He cannot allow that. He has to transmigrate this, not necessarily because he doesn't want me to get Dark Magician, but because he doesn't want me to have this body on the field. So transmigrates my Apprentice. Baiting out the Transmigration one way or another is important. If he did not negate it, then I would have comboed further to go into my Goddess here. So he shuffles that back. Then I can use my Soul Servant. At this point, he can use his Tachyon Spiral Galaxy in response to protect one of his dragons. If he does that, I can chain my Ultimate Fusion immediately to pop whatever he targets before this resolve. So I put Expanded on top of the deck, then I draw it. At this point, he can chain his Tachyon Spiral Galaxy to protect him, and at that point, I can Ultimate Fusion him, right? So at every point during this combo, basically, he can use Tachyon Spiral Galaxy before Expanded resolves in some form or fashion anytime before it resolves. Oh my goodness. Thank you for the subscription, Randy Newen. That's 3 shoutouts in one video. This is crazy work, bro. So yeah, at any point, he can use his Tachyon Spiral Galaxy preemptively to prevent him from being destroyed by my Ultimate Fusion. But then I chain my Ultimate Fusion at any point that he would do such a thing. So I can use my Expanded, and boom, once I've actually used my Expanded and that's actually resolved, I can use my Ultimate Fusion and he's not going to be able to respond at all. Whatever he protected with Tachyon Spiral Galaxy would get destroyed, and the other one that he summons can just be goddessed off, right? So I can Ultimate Fusion At this point, he cannot respond anymore, so I go into Dragon Master Knight and pop his Tachyon so he can no longer use Tachyon Spiral Galaxy from the hand. So at this point, since my rod is big enough, I can just attack into the Hope Harbinger and attack in for game. From that game, you could see that the threat of Goddess is almost as good as the Goddess itself. You know, baiting out interruptions just by threatening the Goddess in the first place. Goddess is like Tachyon's biggest weakness because it's an extra deck kaiju, you know. So preventing us from getting as many bodies as possible is very important. But, you know, we can keep showing more going second examples just to show how we can beat our worst matchup. Tachyon is easily the worst matchup for this deck. Every other deck, we can just kind of easily Goddess or easily Dragoon them to death, especially with Apprentice. He's going to reveal, search for a Primal. He's going to summon his Primal. That's going to search for his Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, and I just have to assume that he has his other trap in hand as well. So he goes into Hope Harbinger in defense mode, sets one back row. Let's see how we can get through this. Illusion of Chaos reveals and searches for Magician's Souls and puts back the Magician's Salvation. Because it's a going first card, we don't need going first card. We can add Ultimate Fusion to our hand with a skill and play the Ultimate Dragon to the field. We activate Circle. This is going to perfectly bait out his back renegade because he can't let this resolve, right? So I use my skill. That's going to reveal my Illusion of Chaos and sends my Dark Magician to the grave. Search for Expanded, the best card for going second, and my Soul Servant. So at this point, I have the 3 pieces here that can interrupt the opponent the best. I can use my Magician's Soul, sending Dark Magician to turn on my Expanded. That's going to summon itself. And I can use my Expanded. That is going to bait out his Transmigration here. That's going to shuffle my Expanded back into the deck. That's exactly what I want. The main goal is to bait out the Transmigration at any cost, and Expanded is the best way to do it, especially if you have another way to bait out the Titanic Galaxy. Soul Servant can also do the exact same thing. Magician's Rod is going to activate. He can use his Imperm here. I've got to make sure to not activate in the Imperm column, right? Since they play 6 Imperm, basically, they're always going to have it. Now we use our Ultimate Fusion. Since he has already used both his Hope Harbinger interruption and his Transmigration interruption, and if he uses Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, then I just pop the other one. So he uses Tachyon Spiral Galaxy, targets his Hope Harbinger, so then I instead destroy his Tachyon. So the only thing I have to deal with now is his Hope Harbinger. So all I need to do is get any other monster on the field. So I'm going to get Soul Servant. That's going to put Timaeus on the top, and I can draw 2 cards. Then I can special summon my Apprentice. That is going to search another Dark Magician. Now I have materials on the field. I can go right into my Goddess, and then with Timaeus or Apprentice in my hand, I can summon it to the field, and that's game. That's the Goddess game plan. Okay, so Lee-Kun not only helped me to get these replays, but he also, through testing against the deck's biggest weakness, the Tachyon matchup, was able to help me to hone the game plan further, figure out what works and what doesn't work, so I can bring you this video today. And I don't want you guys to think that Lee-Kun is a bad duelist because I'm showing a whole bunch of replays of me beating him. That's not what this is. This is just an example. Just think of me as your martial artist teacher, and he's just another black belt who's being the example of what you should do when you are in this scenario. Once again, big shout out to Lee-Kun from the Discord. The Discord is a great place for testing, for getting better at the game, for honing your decks to be better against the meta. Lee-Kun's one of the best duelists in the Discord right now, so big shout out to him. If you want to join the Discord, get helped out by other Discord members and become the best duelist you can be, the link is in the description, and you might end up being in a video like this yourself as well. You can look at this video like an update video for Dark Magician, but also as kind of a super advanced guide where I'm telling you specific things you can do in specific situations, but that doesn't help you to learn the deck itself. If you want to learn the deck itself, you're definitely going to want to go and watch the other Dark Magician videos. So I've made a Dark Magician playlist. You can watch the entire thing, and using just those videos, you're going to be well on your way to becoming a Dark Magician master. And now that I have built a version of Dark Magician that I feel has a solid game plan into the meta, I'm probably going to be starting to stream Dark Magician once the ban list takes effect. So if you are interested in seeing Dark Magician on stream, be sure to turn your notifications on so that you can be there live while I'm streaming of this deck. Of course, the deck list is going to be in the description as well, so feel absolutely free to copy it. Big thank you to the Dark Magician community for watching my Dark Magician videos and trying out my builds. Guys, I want to know, tell me in the comments, do you prefer this Dark Magician girl, this Dark Magician girl, or this Dark Magician girl? You can just say Animated Magician Girl, DSOD Magician Girl, or OG Dark Magician Girl. Personally, I think I like this one quite a bit. Aside from that, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to get notified next time we drop a video. Have yourselves a good one, guys, and I've been Undead from Team 6K, signing out.
Hey, why they gotta hate on me? I done got me 250,000 views and they still saying they low-key. They ain't wanna come work with the kid, but I'm flexing with Zay on beats. How they ask for a spot at the gym, but they leave all the weight on me. I don't ask them to wait on me. They would ask where they gon' be with a song if they wanted the Weatherman. I ain't ask them to pay no fees. She was homeless and needed a spot. I ain't ask her to pay no lease. I ain't ask her to say no please. I ain't ask her to make no cheese. Scream fake, but it ain't on me. Got clean, so it ain't no streets. Why green if it ain't no keeps? Brought cream, so it ain't no beef. My team say it ain't no chief. My demon, they hang on me. They seemingly ain't no peace. I seen him, he ain't no beast. For real.